Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my labor and delivery story of my son Gabriel. If you've been following my channel for a while, then you know that I had been pregnant for what seemed like forever, and I had to get induced at 41 weeks and 3 days. Mr. Gabriel is sleeping right now, which he does most of the time anyways, but he has been absolutely amazing. He's such a good little baby, and he sleeps, and he's been so good with breastfeeding, and it's just been absolutely amazing. So he is sleeping right now, so I'm not gonna wake him up. But anyways, moving right into my birth story. I will link my labor and delivery vlog below for you guys if you haven't seen that yet. Go ahead and go watch that. But yeah, so I was 41 weeks and 3 days pregnant when I went into the hospital. And I went in on December 17th to be induced. And my husband and I went in. We had to be there between 7 and 8 at night. So we went in, and when we got there, of course, they hooked me up to machines and stuff to watch the baby and everything. And his heart rate was extremely high. It was in the 170s and 180s when it shouldn't even go above 160. So they couldn't even start me on any type of medication until his heart rate went down. So we had to just kind of be sitting ducks until about 12:30 in the morning. And that's when they were allowed to give me my first dose or whatever, my first medication, if you will. And like I said, that was hours later. So they were worried about his heart rate, so they put me on oxygen to try that, and I did that for about a half hour, but that didn't seem to do anything. It didn't calm him down. And they gave me like 2 IV fluid bags to see if I was dehydrated, which I wasn't. But none of that was working. But his heart rate did calm down on its own. It just took obviously a long time. So about 12:30, the doctor came in and they checked my cervix just to see if anything was kind of happening on its own, which I didn't think it was, considering I had to be induced since I was there to be induced anyways. They checked me and I was 0 everything. I wasn't effaced, I wasn't dilating, basically my body wasn't doing anything on its own. So they gave me Cervidil, and I always get them Cervidil and Pitocin confused, but I believe that Cervidil is what dilates you or softens the cervix. So they gave me that, which was extremely painful whenever they put that in there. But that basically sits on the outside of the cervix to soften it and get contractions going. So they told me you were probably going to experience some contractions, but in 12 hours, we will, do the next step, which would be, either inserting the balloon to open up my cervix, dilate it for me, or Pitocin or something like that. So I had to sit there with the Cervidil in for 12 hours. And at about, I think it was like 2, 3 in the morning, I woke up and I was having consistent contractions, and they weren't painful. They were just like, I knew they were there. They woke me up. So I started having the consistent contractions, and I was timing them or whatever. And then when the nurse came in, I had told her, I said, I'm having consistent contractions. And she said, yeah, that's perfect. That's great. That means the Cervidil's working, etc. So I was like, okay, great. Maybe my body's going to eventually do something on its own. And as time progressed, my contractions got worse and worse and worse. And they had told me that if I felt crazy uncomfortable and that I couldn't take it anymore, to let them know, and they would come in and check my cervix to see if it was dilating faster than they had anticipated. So about 9, 10 a.m., I was to the point where I couldn't breathe through them anymore, and I couldn't talk through them. I was in so much pain, I was crying like the baby that I am. So I called the nurse and I told her that I just couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't do it. And when she came in, she said that you know, I needed to try to put it off as far from then as I could, because waiting till noon, the full 12 hours would have been more beneficial, because then that allows the full time for the medicine to take effect. So I said, okay. And I did my best to try to get through it. And I think about 11 is when I said, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. And a doctor came in and he checked my cervix and he said that I was only dilated at a 1. And I just could not believe my ears that I was only a 1, considering the amount of pain I was in. And if you hear Emmeline, she's awake now. She just got up from her nap. But anyways, I was in so much pain. I was like, there's no way I could be a 1. And I was just hysterical crying. And at that point, a different nurse came in, and he was like, you know, what's wrong? Tell me what's going on. And I told him, I said, you know, they say I'm only at 1 and I'm in so much pain and I don't understand. And at this point, my cervix was still really far back there. I don't know why. I don't know if it had something to do with my body not doing anything on its own, which is why it was so far back. But anyways, every time I had my cervix checked, it was just hard because they had to go so far back there. So anyways, I'm telling this nurse, you know, my worries and that I just couldn't believe it and I was in so much pain. And he said, okay, let me feel your contractions. So he put his hands on my stomach and, you know, looked at the monitor, and then he obviously could tell when I was having a contraction because I was just in so much pain. And he was like, he told me that my contractions were hard and intense and my whole stomach would get hard, which I already knew. And he said that he was like, yeah, I don't understand how you're a 1. So he went, and I'm assuming he went and got a midwife because that's who came in next. And this amazing woman, the midwife, who I hadn't even seen at all during my pregnancy, she came in and she said, let me just double check you. And she said, I'm just gonna do a more thorough check than the doctor before you, or before her. And she said, so it's probably gonna be more uncomfortable. And I'm like, oh, great, it's already uncomfortable because my cervix is so far back. Anyways, so she checks me and it was excruciatingly painful. And she said, no, you're a 4. So basically the doctor before her said I was only a 1, whereas she said I'm a 4, and which would explain why I was in the amount of pain that I was in. So she was like, she was so sweet. I can't even, oh my gosh, if I could give that woman an award for just being amazing, I would definitely do that, because I was worried about giving birth at a military hospital to begin with, because my first experience was so amazing, but that was not on a base. And then this time was going to be, and I had a nervous feeling throughout my pregnancy about it. And for them to tell me I was only a 1, and then for a midwife to come in and say I was a 4 just made me so upset, because I mean, what would have happened if she hadn't have come in? Would they have finally given me an epidural when I was 8 centimeters? You know what I mean? So that was just frustrating. I mean, for women who are doing the whole natural birth thing, that wouldn't have probably been that bad, because, you know, you would have planned to go the whole labor without any medicine. But for somebody like me who had anticipated getting an epidural, having them tell me I was only a 1, being in that much pain was bad. But moving on. So she went and she got the anesthesiologist to come in and give me my epidural right away, which he did. And then we're on to my next problem, which is the epidural only working on one side. And I don't want to say that it only worked 100% on one side, but it just was more so on that one, on my right side. So he did the epidural and my right side was completely numb. I mean, like, I couldn't even lift my leg. It was that numb. And then my left side, I could lift my leg, I could wiggle my toes, and I could feel everything. It just wasn't painful, if that makes sense. Like, it just, if there was pressure, I felt it. If there was a contraction, I full on felt it, just without all the pain and the intensity as I had done without the epidural. So it wasn't necessarily the worst thing that could have happened, but with my first pregnancy, I was completely numb, and it was, you know, it was much more obviously enjoyable labor-wise because I wasn't in any pain. Oh, good job. You were so sweet, you know that? So anyways, the epidural only had worked full on one side, and that was just frustrating because, I mean, once the epidural's in, I don't think that there's much they could do unless they wanted to take the whole thing out, which I don't think that they do. So anyways, it didn't take me long at all to go from a 4 to a 7 and then to a 10. So it didn't take me very long to dilate from a 4 to a 10, and I didn't need anything else after the Cervidil. The Cervidil kind of gave my body what it needed to kind of do its own thing. It didn't start out that way because obviously I needed something to get things moving, and that's exactly what the Cervidil did. It started the contractions for me, and even after the Cervidil wore off, I was still contracting and dilating on my own. So I didn't need that balloon thing to go into my cervix to dilate it for me, and I didn't need Pitocin either because my body had continued to do what it was supposed to do. So that was definitely a plus. The next time they had checked me, I was a 7, and like I said, I could feel pretty much everything on the left side of my body except for like pain, if that makes sense. Like I could just feel a ton of pressure. I could feel the contractions. So I knew I was getting further along in dilation, that's for sure. And then it seems like they had checked me and I was a 7, and then literally like 15 minutes later, I felt the biggest urge to go number 2. Sorry if that's TMI, which I'd never had with my first pregnancy because like I said, I was so numb that I never felt that intense pressure that I had felt this time around. And I waited a little while to see if it kind of continued, and it just got worse and worse, and I literally felt like I had to sit on the toilet and go. So I paged my nurse and I said, look, they told me if I feel like I need to go to the bathroom that this is it. And she was like, I don't want to say that she was mean, but it was a new nurse on the floor, and she was like, well, we just checked you. You didn't go from a 7 to a 10 that quickly. And I said, well, I understand that, you know, you think that, and I very well might not be, but the doctor said if I feel this, that I need to call somebody, that it's time to push. And I said, because I feel like I need to push. And she said, okay, well, I'll go get them and we'll just check you, but you're not going to be a 10. And I was like, fine, I don't care. I don't care. Somebody just check me before I go number 2 on this bed. And she had me convinced that maybe I just had to go to the bathroom and maybe it wasn't the baby, but I don't know. I just was like, no, I need to push. Like this is it. So the doctor comes in, well, it's the midwife again. And I love her. I wish I had seen her my entire pregnancy. She was so amazing. I just can't even get over it. And I can't talk enough about her. But she's the one who came back in. And she came in and she said, okay, let's check you again. And because I told her, I said, I feel like I got to push. And so she checked me. She said, oh yeah, you're a 10. And I wanted to look at that nurse and be like, girl, you need to listen to me when I'm telling you that I need to push something out of me. You know what I'm saying? So she told me that I was not going to be dilated to a 10, and I was. I literally went from a 7 to a 10 in like a half an hour. And so they quickly rushed everything in there and got doctors and nurses and God only knows who. I kept my eyes closed the entire time that I was pushing because of the amount of pressure that I was feeling was so intense. Like I said, it wasn't painful, but it was just so intense, especially compared to my first pregnancy, which I did not have that amount of pressure at all. So pushing, I don't know the exact time. I think Josue, my husband, said that I pushed for maybe a half an hour. And my first pregnancy, I pushed for a full hour before baby was born. And it was the most amazing experience. The midwife was absolutely out of this world. And it was great. I did have a little tear. And if you guys watched my first labor and delivery story with my daughter, I had a severe severe second degree tear the first time. and it was like muscles tore and skin tore. It was just really bad, and my healing time took almost like 7 months or something crazy to finally fully heal, where I felt good again. And this time I did tear, and it was, I literally needed maybe 2 stitches, and it was only a surface tear. It wasn't like a muscle tear, which I had the first time around. So that was amazing in my eyes. And then my little boy was born into the world, and you want to hear something crazy is that he was born December 18th at 4:44 p.m. And that is the exact same time that my daughter was born. Is that so crazy? She was born at 4:44 p.m. on June 9th. And my reaction is in our birth vlog, because my husband was filming and they said the time in military time, and I don't know military time, and they said it, but when I heard the 44, I was like, wait, did they say 4:44? And they were like, yeah. And I looked at Josue and I was like, that's the same time Emmeline was born. And it's just so crazy. It just blows my mind how weird that is. But yeah, so then my little boy was here and all was good. I'm going to be updating you guys about everything kind of after the birth. You know, I'm gonna do a 1-week update for him, and then I'll do a 1-week postpartum update for myself for you guys, and kind of go over a little bit more in detail, like what happened with me and how I'm feeling and how I've felt during the week, because right now I'm only 5 days postpartum. And he's obviously 5 days old, so I will be filming those updates for you. And yeah, I'm so in love with him. I just didn't know that I had so much more room in my heart to love another little human the way that I love my daughter. But I was worried about it. I was like, I'm not gonna love him like I love Emmeline, and it's so not true. I'm so in love with him. But before I sign off here, I'm going to show you guys little Gabriel as calmly as I can, because he is sleeping, so I don't want to wake him up. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I love each and every one of you, and I will see you in my next video. This is Gabriel, my little sweetheart. Look how little he is. And I forgot to mention that he was born 8 pounds, 2 ounces, and 20 inches long. So he was a little big boy when he was born. But I just forgot to mention that.